What's up, you guys? Chet-Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all from the mountains in beautiful West Virginia. Now today, I am actually here out at a ghost town, here in what was once known as Thurman, West Virginia. Now if you're curious on what Thurman, West Virginia was, it was a small railroad town established in the early 1900s by Captain Thomas Thurmond. Now Captain Thomas Thurmond, originally back in around the 1860s during the Civil War, he had a small gang of Confederate sympathizers that ran throughout the South, tried to preserve the Confederacy as best he could. But it was about until the 1870s when he was granted about 75 acres of land along the railroad tracks in this beautiful side of West Virginia. Now, how he acquired 75 acres of land, he was a surveyor for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. And for many years, this 75 acres of land, he called it his own. Until the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroads decided to put a station out here in this side of West Virginia. As a result of this would cause little Thurman, West Virginia to boom. And over the course of a few short years into the early 1900s, this small town by the railroad tracks grew by the thousands. And it kept growing, kept growing. This particular town, it had 2 banks, it had 2 giant hotels, it had a very thriving community. Well, up until the need for coal was no longer needed, everything switched to diesel, and roads throughout the nearby towns were being built and cars were being made more accessible throughout the countryside. And that caused a town with several thousand people to dwindle into its present population, which is only about 5 people in this area. So it's very small. People no longer really live in this area, and that is why it is considered a ghost town now. So today, while we were out here at Thurman, West Virginia, we are going to explore this ghost town. We are going to talk about some of the history related to these areas. There's still a lot of history despite some of the buildings being burned down, and quite a history that is associated with this land. So without further ado, you guys, let's get to it. Let's check out the ghost town of Thurman, West Virginia. Let's do it. So when talking about Thurman, West Virginia, let's start on how this small town became the titan that it once was. And how we are going to do this, right in front of you, you will see the old Thurman station. That was not the original. The original burned down in like the early 1900s, around 1900 I believe it was. And that one I believe was built somewhere in the around 1915. But if you were looking in front of you, you will see 4 different tracks. This one goes by a series of coal mines. It leaves out about 2-3 times a day. And this one right here, which is dug up, this used to be the main line that used to run between Thurmond and the rest of the world. As you all can tell, it no longer leads to anywhere. It just stops right about there. So right here on this side, this track right to your left, that is an Amtrak or an Amtrak track. It takes people throughout the mountains. It's usually used by hikers and tourists. However, it only runs a couple of times a day as well. But really the main line that still runs to this day is this track right here. And I've only been out here a few minutes, and I've already seen about 5 or 6 trains coming and going in this one particular set of tracks. And just look how this sign is preserved by the National Park Service. Still as if it was like it was brand new. However, I don't think this railroad depot has, well, been working in a while. No longer do you have to get a ticket in the ticket booth. It's just a building that is pretty well preserved by the National Park Service. But just think, way back in the day, to my left, you would have railroad cars running day in and day out, carrying people to different parts of West Virginia in the United States. Now, it does look recently like they've been painting it. Right in front of me, there's the scaffold. So, who knows? Maybe they can get this ghost town like running into like a small attraction. I think that would be really cool. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Waiting room, entrance. Now, there was a ticket booth here at one time, and that's really what I'm trying to see through the glass, but I guess I'm just not seeing it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in its heyday, Thurman, West Virginia had 2 hotels at one time. One of them was the Hotel Thurmond on this side of the river, and on the other side of the river you had the Dun Glen Hotel. Now, the Dun Glen Hotel, we will say it was rather infamous. You see, on this side of the river, Captain Thurmond, he did not like gambling of any sort. Gambling, prostitution. He did not like any, well, more or less lewd activities. So, as a way of saying face, on the other side of the river, they built the Dun Glen Hotel. Yes, so if you were a bit more on the wilder side, all you really had to do was cross the train tracks over to the Dun Glen Hotel. And now there is another special thing about the Dun Glen Hotel, and that is that it is also the site of the world's largest, or longest, yes, there we go, the world's longest game of poker. You see, this game of poker, it went on for 14 years. And it probably would have gone on even longer if the Dun Glen Hotel had not caught fire. And by the way, that's a really cool way to get in and out of Thurman. Yes, you can ride right along the railroad tracks. And I will say, this bridge is absolutely gorgeous. And the new river is very magnificent as well. It's very peaceful out here in West Virginia. And I will say, this state is very beautiful when it comes to nature, which I'm surprised why the state really isn't building more on its natural beauty, because I'd love to come out here more often. Well, if it wasn't like 6 hours away, I'd come out here more often. So that now that we've seen some of the newer things here at Thurmond, or I should say the newer, older things, most of this stuff has been renovated for future generations. Let's check out the buildings that are, how should we say, falling into disrepair, but the National Forestry Service, the National Park Service, there we go. The National Park Service is still taking care of them. So let's see, downtown Thurmond. I just noticed this as we were walking in, but check this out. This is an old school dolly. Well, I should say, for the most part, it's new. It looks like the wheels are from the older vehicle that it once was. That's new wood, or some of that substitute wood that they have nowadays. So I really like the cool display that they have here. It is just so calm out here. The birds in the trees, the roar of the river. And just think, about 120 years ago, all of this was so much different. Imagine people from all places and all walks of life walking down these streets and disappearing, never to be heard from again. It was definitely a different time back then. A more peaceful time. A time that maybe we could learn from in the future. And the first building we have come to is the Thurman, West Virginia Post Office. Now, I don't think that the post office works anymore or runs. I think it's been closed down for a while. At least I'm guessing, because most of the glass is barred off. So But then again, you've got the flags. Looks like they're kind of tattered and worn out. So maybe it still runs. I don't know about the post office. Maybe it does. That would be cool to see if it still ran. And right here used to be the water towers. These water towers could hold several million gallons of water. And that was not for the water for town. That was for nothing but the trains going down the tracks. These things were giant for their time. However, I think one was torn down, and I know the other burned down as well. I mean, and that's one of the sad things that I hate about Thurmond, West Virginia, is because a lot of these other classic buildings you will see, or at least the foundations, they were burned. Either intentional or not intentional. Some of these buildings were very old and made of wood. And right here, these blocks that you see before you, that was the train's water tower. This is where the trains would get all their water. Get some coal while they're at it, and then go on their way. If you all are familiar with this ghost town, then these three buildings will come to you rather quickly. These are the three buildings that are the most iconic pieces about Thurmond, West Virginia. The buildings right along the train tracks. Well, way back when, all of this was downtown. This is where people would come and go. This is where a doctor's house was. This is where the Hotel Thurman stood. And this is where one of its banks stood as well. And as we're walking, look at the mural on that building. That is amazing. Now this building right in front of us, this was the doctor's office. This doctor's office was purchased in the early 1900s for a grand total of $4,000. Now you might not think that to be a lot, but back then in the early 1900s, that was the equivalent of about $250,000 in today's world. But it was purchased in 1904 by Dr. J. Ward Mencken and his wife as well. This was also the site of a pharmacy. But this is where you would get your drugs. This is where, if you worked for the railroad, or if you were a miner in the area and you got hurt really bad, Dr. Mencken and his wife, this is where you would go. This is where they would take you if you were seriously hurt. Hopefully it wouldn't kill you, but then again, medical practices back then were kind of iffy. And if you look right there, you can see that the foundation is wearing down, sadly, which I hate that, because if you look up here, see if I can't get it up there, you will see like the old school that old school type of wallpaper that you don't see anymore. They don't make buildings like that anymore. And through that you can also see through the wall of how that's falling apart. And once again, let's take a look at the flooring. I mean, I hate that it's falling through on the foundation, but that is just so fascinating to see. And as we have talked about, a place that is rather scary for some people, we will talk about the building that was more or less meant for the entertainment. This middle building right here, they had it had a restaurant in it, it had shops in it, it had everything in it. And I believe at the top, they also had apartments as well. But this is where you would have your fun. Although, it has seen better days, as you all can tell. Just beyond the glass, they have a timeline of what Thurman would have looked like. 1873, Captain Thurman acquired 73 acres along the New River, and then you kind of see where everything took off from there. Like if you look at 1995, this was a visitor center at one point, and it makes me sad that they stopped using it as a visitor center, because this building is awesome. And just beyond those doors on the other side, it says Thurmond, West Virginia. The National Park Service has really done a very cool display for this building, but while I was at the train depot, it looked like it was a visitor center. So I guess maybe that's where they moved it. Although I think it would have been way cooler to see the visitor center still here. But you see some more dioramas of what it looked like. This building right here on the far end, that's another picture of the Dun Glen Hotel, and that burned down in 1930. But the real name of this building right here is the Goodman Kincaid Building. And they have a few more photos of what Thurmond was like back in the late 1700s and early 1900s. Because, well, like, I mean, yeah, you wouldn't think that the switch from diesel, or from coal to diesel, would have affected the town as bad as it did. But it hurt the town pretty bad. And especially during the Great Depression, that was another fatal blow to the town of Thurmond. And right here at this photo, well, let's talk about the repair house. Seeing a train go by always makes me happy. It always has. Even when I was a kid. But the repair house, it stood somewhere in this area. And it stood here up until about 1993, until the building caught fire. Now, it had been abandoned for some time prior to that. So I figured I'd share with you all a couple of photos of what the interior looked like. And as you all can tell, it's nothing more than a parking lot now. But I will say, there is a part of the foundation right here of where it once stood. Now, as you all can tell, it just kind of goes off into the woods. But I think what is the coolest part about it is right here, there's a piece of the wood. There is a piece of probably what is the only thing left of this repair house, except nothing but a bunch of leaves, rocks, and trees that have been here probably for about 40 or 50 years now. So having said that, let's check out the National Bank of Thurmond. Now, the Great Depression, it was another thing that killed Thurmond, especially since we are talking about the National Bank of Thurmond. Around 1931 is when the Great Depression really hit, and that's when two of Thurmond's banks closed. But what I find so interesting about this building, as it just kind of looks like it's been sitting in the mud, is this bank right here, or what was once a bank. This is where the last true business in Thurmond, West Virginia stood. It was a small restaurant by the railroad tracks, and that diner, I think it closed sometime in 1988. But I really like how they still have the old painted murals, the National Bank of Thurmond. Member Federal Reserve System. Just a relic from the days of its booming economy. And as you all can see, the doors are boarded up, or the windows are boarded up, and it's just a relic from the past. As I have mentioned a few times already, there were two hotels here at one time. One was the Dun Glen Hotel, a hotel where you could do prostitution, you could have your fun gambling, playing poker, and, well, mysteriously disappearing if you made the wrong person mad. Well, the Hotel Thurmond, it was different. It was a place for those coming and going. It was where your peace, I guess those who just wanted peace, those who worked for the railroad and the mining companies could stay with their families. And anyway, sadly enough, it burned down in 1963. But what made the hotel so cool is for its time, it had over 400 electric lights. It was steam heated. It had a ballroom, a dining room, a pool room, and they even had a movie theater. If you can believe it, they had a movie theater out here in the middle of nowhere. And for the most part, it showed westerns. And by some accounts, the building was so close to the railroad tracks that people could pull their hands outside and slap the rail or the trains as they went by. Now, however, as you can see, it's just a gravel dirt road now. It's no longer a railroad or a part of a line. But just think about its heyday. There used to be a hotel right here where we are standing. And this was Thurman's downtown district. That building burned down, and I believe those two buildings burned down as well. But if there's really anything left to talk about, that was the Thurmond Hotel. Here is some of its foundations, where it once stood at one time. Just think, we are standing in the basement of a beautiful, beautiful hotel that is no more. As you all may have noticed at this point, there were quite a few lines that ran throughout Thurmond. More than these four that you see right here. Mostly they were different lines for different repairs. And one line in particular, this is where the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad would get their coal. This is where the trains would come in. This is where they would stop. And this is where they'd fill up on coal. And I just like, if you look at the tracks, they seemingly go to nowhere. I mean, technically they do. As you all can see, the CSX Railroad is working on some track. Looks like they're laying some stuff down. But if you look more towards the bottom, you can kind of see what it used to look like internally. But it's fallen on hard times. This is one part that I really wanted to see, just because I love railroads and whatnot, trains, what have you. But just look at what was once the interior. This is one of the rooms that technically you can see. Looks like it was covered up at one point. However, it no longer is. Looks like there was a second floor at one point, but sadly it's no longer there. It looks like it's caught fire. Again, if you haven't noticed, that's been the bane of Thurman, West Virginia's existence. Fire, which was another thing that killed this town. I'm trying to see what else can be seen there. Not really seeing a whole lot else. So let's walk around some more and see what is left of this old coal bin area. Look at that. Imagine that's where they would pour all the coal, and this is where they would throw it into the vehicles. Well, not vehicles. This is where they would throw it into the trains. And if you look up there, you can see the old winding pulleys and whatnot. Those probably haven't seen any use in over 100 years or better. What is in here? Looks like a compression room of some sort. Actually, let's go inside. Let's see what is behind here. So it does look like another room you can visit. Dude, look at that old turbine. I was right. This is way cooler up front. However, it does look like somebody has colored on it or spray painted it. Why? Why, people? Why must you do that? Looks like beyond this room, well, Oh, it opens. Well, let's see where it goes. Oh, this is a part of the old coal bin area. This is where the coal would get poured or get pushed up from the bottom up to the very top. That is such a cool piece of history. Dude, that is so incredible. And across from that building here is another building. I believe this was for the railroad conductors that were operating the bins. Looks like that hole has been filled in. And there are a lot of pokeberries here. Looks like we have some more foundation. No telling what kind of stories this particular building saw in its heyday. Only over 100 years later to be filled with pokeberry, snakes, and, well, dragonflies. There are a lot of dragonflies in here. So I think we're gonna head to the next building that is out here at Thurmond. And here are a few other foundations that are here at Thurmond. Looks like it was another compression room at some point, probably used by the railroad. But it looks like it's just a picnic table now. Now it must have been something special, because look at the rock work in that. Well, we all know that it stood right next to Hotel Thurmond, so it probably was a part of entertainment, or, well, judging by the size of that big piece of machinery, that's probably this is probably just run by the railroads. And speaking of all places in downtown, here is the Thurman Town Hall. Now I'm not sure if it's used by the last 5 people who live out here, but it does look like it's pretty well upkept. I still don't think it's been used in a while though. Now we're finally getting into the abandoned homes of Thurmond. Looks like I came out on a good day. CSX is working on the railroad tracks. Again, it's so cool to see all the various different types of locomotives that are out here on the rails present day. And right here is the historic Thurmond guest house. Probably in the best shape compared to some of these other buildings out here, or I should say most. As you all can tell, it is painted. And here it talks a little bit more about the Thurman's historic guest house. Notice this structure is currently being restored as a community volunteer project in an effort to begin refurbish of the houses and buildings within the town of Thurmond. So this building right here, it is the process that is going on. The locals and the National Park Service, they are keeping these buildings safe for future generations. I really like how they've painted this one, although it looks like it's more for the community out here. And beneath this sign, I just now noticed this, but look at all the various different knickknacks they found here while working on this building. They have an old tuna can, they have some old pieces of rusty railroad workings, and they have some coal, but that coal is probably not all that old. Also, they have a beer can. Now this building right here along the railroad tracks, this is the Sid Childers / Margie Richmond house. Now, I really don't know a whole lot of history about it, other than it looks like it's pretty well taken care of. I imagine it was owned by one of the families during the days of the railroad companies. And from up here, or going up the hill, we have some of the old houses from Thurmond, from the time when people used to live in this area. Only now, the only inhabitants are 5 people, and weeds, trees, plants, what have you, slowly swallowing some of these houses that aren't well managed. Just look at that brick, or that concrete. They don't make them like they used to. And right across from that building, we have the Marilyn Brown house. Again, from another inhabitant from a bygone era. It's like it doesn't have any stairs, but I mean, I wouldn't want to go up there, disturb the building anyway. So this is kind of a big difference between this place and Elkmont. If you've ever been to Elkmont in the Great Smoky Mountains, you can walk into the buildings. These, they got them boarded off, which I can understand why. They just don't want people getting hurt, or they just don't want these buildings to get vandalized further. So let's go up the hill now, shall we, to a few of these other houses that are standing still. However, nobody is really living in them. And probably it's been a while since actual inhabitants have driven up this stretch of road right here. So I think the next house we'll check out is this one right here. Now it's pretty obvious that a car hasn't been up this driveway in a while. It's mostly covered by kudzu now. Nothing's really living in it, which I can tell. Yeah, nobody is living in that. It does look like recently it's been given a paint job, so I will give the National Park Service that. But here, hidden in the pokeberries, here we have some more houses that are more or less built into the side of the hill. I don't think that I'm gonna go out that far, just because I don't know what is out there. However, it looks like we can still go up further up the hill here. So maybe we can get to those houses. Dude, just check out this rock foundation that's out here. There's either a really beautiful house on the other side of that foundation, or this was a part of the house itself. It's good to see that they boarded that off. Looks like you can go further. So correction, we might be able to see these buildings. They're just in a really deep spot here on the mountainside. Awesome, we can. Right here. It's just that there's a whole bunch of pokeberry and a whole bunch of trees. And yeah, you don't want to mess with these thorn bushes. Okay, that was not fun. That actually took some work to get back here. So technically, yes, you can walk up to these buildings, but like the others, they are boarded up. Look at that one. Just look at how all these buildings are just hanging here on the mountainside, just slowly withering, slowly being forgotten too, but at least nobody can get hurt. That's the important part. There's that other house right there. So that was cool. But now let's get to this other building. Looks like it's about the same. And it looks like there is a set of stairs right here that I did not notice. Quite honestly, we probably could have easily just walked up those stairs if I had just gone the other way. But I didn't do that. We all make questionable decisions in life. And we have finally made it to this building. Much like the building right there and the building below us. Both of them we have already looked at. I'm not gonna lie. This foundation right here feels a little bit weak. Which is, well, totally understanding considering this building is turn of the century. It's quite old. See what is around the bin here. Probably nothing. Just that right there, part of an old porch. And it looks like they've closed that off. Now that we have seen that house, since I found an extra set of stairs that I did not previously know about, let's go up here where all these weeds and vines are, and hopefully I don't fall again. That would not be good of me to fall again, because that means I'd fall back on those houses. And beneath my feet, if you can believe it, that's a bedpan. That's what people used to pee and poo in. Well, this was unexpected. Here on top of the hill, after getting up those sketchy stairs, we have found another building. Only this one looks like it is in better shape. Looks like they've actually really done a good job on taking care of this one. As you can see, that's what it looks like on the foundations. Not really a whole lot to see, but it does look like they've been working on this one. It looks like something used to be here at one point before the foundation collapsed. So there's a street light, and that looks almost like there was a trough there at one time, or maybe some kind of fountain related deal. I haven't seen these in quite a while. If you don't know what these are, these go to power lines. Growing up, a lot of my family worked for the power companies in Tennessee, and I grew up playing with those things. It looks like they've kept the doors boarded up, which no telling what's on the other side of those doors, but I can see why maybe they would board it up like they have, just to keep people out. But there always has to be that one person. Well, unfortunately the GoPro died, so I'm out here with the phone. I'm about to call it a vlog here soon, but real quick, I wanted to show you all this one last foundation. When we were down at those two houses, this is what was on the other end. Look at that wrought iron fence work. For its time, even present day, that type of fencing job, they cost, like those types of fencing jobs, they cost a lot of money. But the one particular foundation I wanted to show you all before we called it a vlog is this one right here. Now, I don't know anything about this house, but that's so cool that it goes all the way up to the top, seemingly into nowhere. You know what? This house probably caught fire. And I am really sweaty too. This was a fun trip. Anyway, guys, remember, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Always means a lot. Goes to show that y'all care and that y'all want to see more awesome videos. And something else to notice, or something to note in this video, this is the last video, well, for this particular season. You see, next video starts haunt season. Yes, season 3 of haunt season. I'm super excited. This is my favorite time of the year to tell ghost stories to you guys. So remember, you guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Always means a lot. Love y'all very much. Peace out, you guys.